Now it's working. Hello, world. All right. Tonight's featured reader is on a piece of paper that I can't get to. Is Kim Stafford, hopefully in the right place. Kim writes, teaches, and travels to restore the human spirit. He has published some 20 books, including As the Sky Begins to Change, read Hen Press 2024, and has taught writing in Scotland, Italy, Mexico, and Bhutan. In 2018, he was named Oregon Poet Laureate for a 2-year term. Here is Kim Stafford.
Can we just give Mark and everybody who makes this happen a hand? It's a lot of work. I'm so grateful to be here. So the mention of C. Marie Furman, I took a class from her on the Zumwalt Prairie out of Northeast Oregon a couple summers ago. And we were out on the prairie, and it was so ravishingly beautiful. And everybody was feeling guilty about what we've done to the earth. And we were saying, oh, I'm so sorry about, our development. And there's so few places like this left. And C. Marie burst out, the earth is so happy that you're here. Can't you feel it coming up through your feet? This is a place for joy. I think we should all howl. And so we all howled. And you realize the power of a few words to change everything. For the birds singing before dawn. I go out on my writing shed, and it's dark, and it's cold. And I hear a little bird outside beginning to sing. Way too early. It's on the wrong time zone. What are you doing? For the birds singing before dawn. Some people presume to be hopeful when there is no evidence for hope. To be happy when there is no cause. Let me say now, I'm with them. In deep darkness, on a cold twig in a dangerous world, one first little fluff utters a peep, a warble, a song, and in a little while, behold, first glimmer shows, then a glow filters through misty trees, then the bold sun rises, then everyone starts bustling about. And that first crazy optimist, can we forgive her for thinking dawn by dawn, hey, I made that happen. And oh, life is so fine. Well, we're living in a very strange time. My future daughter-in-law, Angelina, happens to be the Student Veteran of the Year. So she was having lunch with the Bidens in December. And as she walked down the hall, she overheard someone say, poetry is like the truth, and everybody hates poetry. So that got me thinking. It's like the truth. I like that part. Everyone hates poetry. Well, when I was Poet Laureate, I went to Elizabeth Woody's last reading. And she was my predecessor. She'd been all around the state sharing poetry. And she said something, I think I've told this place before, this audience before. She said something that was so important for me. She said, the more I do poetry, the less it's about what the poem is, and more about who the poem serves. Who the poem serves. So if poetry is like truth, who can the truth serve? This became my mantra as I traveled around the state. And I would ask students, I would ask writing groups, think of someone in your life who needs a poem. And then make a poem for that person. Or find a poem for that person. give the gift of healing truth to someone you care about. So I was in Salem at the Queen of Peace School, and I was with the 4th grade, and I threw out this idea. Think of someone in your life who needs a poem, and then make a poem for that person. And, when you're the visiting writer in middle school, high school, college, graduate school, and you say after the writing session, would anyone like to share? In 4th grade, ooh, 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 ooh. So I called in this little guy, and he said, well, I have this friend named Max, so I made a poem for Max. It's called Max. There are 7 continents. There are 7 oceans to cross. There are 50 states. There are 192 countries. There are billions of stars. And I met you. So let's have that be our model when we're writing, think of a person, a place, a creature, a cause that needs a poem, and then write a poem for that. So I didn't know I was writing this poem for the first month of the Trump era, but maybe I was. It's called Resilience. Resilience. Is resilience being strong as iron or perennial as grass? Is resilience standing fast in storms or seeking to understand how old trees, deep-rooted, bend? Resilient is the one who whispers at darkest hours, this too shall pass. Resilience begins in knowing sorrow and ends in knowing how to tell its tale. Resilience mutters in trouble, I wonder what we'll learn. To be resilient juggles strength with tenderness, in compassion stern. Resilience lives through struggle by thinking beyond struggle. What does my foe need to be my friend? Resilience means you need not win and yet prevail. So this morning, I was thinking about our evening, and I thought, well, what could I write for Salem? What could I write for my fellow readers and writers? So I have this poem, and there's some copies back there for you to take. So this is called Salem. Here in Oregon, Salem is our capital. The name means peace, from shalem, shalom in Hebrew, salam in Arabic, as in al-salam alaikum, peace be upon you. These syllables move through Persian, through Urdu, a whisper in the wind to carry the aspiration of complete, whole, peak, perfect, concord, friendship. What does it mean to live in a town called peace? How are you called to behave? Dwelling here, our project must be poetry, choosing words always to love, to welcome, and to heal. You say equally to your friend, your rival, and even your enemy, peace, peace be upon you. So Salem. Okay. We have these crows. They nest in Portland, and they have a full-time job all night shitting on the cars. You can tell if someone left their car downtown because it's white. And then they fan out, they radiate out. You can read the transect as they come over the house. Oh yeah, you're going from the city toward Tualatin, And there's this couple that comes to our yard. There's a big swaggering male and a female who's always kind of looking at him, and he pretends like he doesn't look back. So I decided to try to figure out, how does a crow know its mate? So there are thousands, they're all black. They look, to me pretty similar, and yet these pair bonds are powerful. So how the crow knows her love. He has a certain swagger in the way he dips his beak, a syncopated strutting when he gives a tender shriek, I meet him in the shadows to tickle at his chin, to preen his glossy feathers till he shivers deep within. For I know behind his swagger he's a blooming fool for love. I can make him coo with pleasure as if he were a dove. I can make his vision blur, his eyes roll back and blink, and remind him of this later when I give a fetching wink. He makes me swoon with wonder when he flaps across the sun to bring me fragrant morsels, and I know that he's the one to raise our crowlets, teach them verve and zest, so they can swagger like him by the time they leave the nest. Oh, I can pick him out from the flock, be they thousands in the trees. He makes my heart beat faster and go weak in wings and knees. When he glances past his shoulder to give that sassy look, I know I've got his number. I can read him like a rook. But how these humans find each other is a thing nobody knows. It's an ancient mystery. For swarming in their flocks, they're all lookalikes to me. No inky feet and feathers with rainbow hue to spy the one who has that swagger that can always catch my eye. How they find their partners is a thing nobody knows. It's a pleasure that's so easy when you live among the crows. Okay. Well, writing, part of the idea is have fun. What if you have a time every day when you have an appointment with yourself, with your thoughts, with your aspirations, with your fears? What if you have a time so that when something gets you down in the course of your daily life, you can tell yourself, I have an appointment with that, and a page. I don't have to solve it now. I have an appointment. I have a time for that. So I think of, I would say to my students at Lewis and Clark, if you're a counselor, your writing is your counselor. If you're a teacher, your writing is your teacher. We could go on. If you're a parent, your writing is your parent. What is the source for insight, reflection, discovery? Well, here's another poem I wrote for someone. This lovely couple made their house available to us at the coast. So I wrote this poem for Cheryl and Janet. Why the beach? Half the horizon ancient. No wires, no roads, no development. Maybe a boat out there tracing lonesome. Waves roar, their heartbeat whispers. People have come here to be here. So they walk barefoot like children. Children run wild. Weather rules it all. Something bigger is in charge of you. And every night she reasserts her sovereignty. And every night she cleans up. Yesterday's tracks are gone, even the dance of a dog's joy. Lots of soaring going on, gulls, crows, pelicans, maybe a kite, maybe your gaze, your spirit spiraling the sky. Each day an old man walks to pick up litter. Each day an old woman walks to find a perfect stone. You can walk without a plan. You can sing with wind. You can cry in peace. You can remember being small. You can be small beside immensity. You can be the simple you. For when you said, I'm going to the beach, no one said, why? We all know. Oh, you're going to the beach. Good. Okay. I can't resist. So I wrote this during Trump won. And I imagine Donald auditioning for a part in a Shakespeare play. And so this is called Shakespeare Gives No Call Back to an Aging Actor. Thou hath vice and villainy, rich and plenty. Thou canst strut and fret as a crow at carrion, or a mewling child denied. I could see thee as a man of walls and towers, haughty and reserve, a terror to maids and suckling babes. But thy speech is twittering, thy pride barren, thy heart hungers vainly for that villainous pallor I could fashion to fright groundlings groveling for thy scraps of anguish, and also chill those dressed in lace and scarlet fine. Alas, thy posturings are hollow, thy ravings crowded thick with shallow words. Thou art no Macbeth or Lear, couldst not rise to a singing rage, nor go mad and wander, pelted by a storm of sorrows. For all thy promise, thou couldst not drive my quill spattering in fevered haste to pin thee living to the page. But be not downcast. Have this life. I leave thee with this consolation small. In some speech perhaps rolling from the tongue of a swaggerer, thou shalt be a tale told swiftly of one who had his brittle time and power, who would be king, but then was found to be a man. Savor thy dignity in this and act well thy part. So that's political. This is also political, but with a lighter touch. I think John Lennon said, if you pick up a gun, they know what to do with you. If you make a joke, they're at a loss. So maybe this is more useful. I thought of the Supreme Court when Roe versus Wade went down, and then I thought of the Supremes. Remember the Supremes? Wow. Diana, I think they came to the U of O. I think they sang in their court. So this is called the Supremes. They used to be so great. That string of hits in the 50s, 60s, 70s, off the charts. Their work set a precedent, others followed. When they got unanimous, their harmonies changed us. You felt a hum everywhere that came from them. A new kind of freedom flowed over the land. The one about kids in school after segregation, the one about woman power. Holy moly, when they held court, they were on a roll. You didn't need anyone's judgment call. They were tops. But I guess it couldn't last. They got some new blood, started doing covers by splinter groups, lost their mojo. Some died, some went solo. You couldn't really call them the Supremes anymore. They stopped setting the beat. No more anthems, just echoes. Now the thing is, like that bird before dawn, when I start writing, often I'm troubled, severely troubled. And I remember in the pandemic, some of my students and friends saying, I just can't write. I'm just paralyzed. And I thought, what? This is the time we have to write. This is the time for ourselves, if no one else. And this is going to save us. This is going to keep us level. I had a dream that was very brief. It was explained to me that the way to live was what was called in the dream the blue corn way. The blue corn way. I told this to a friend, and she said, oh, you know what that is? That's the Trail of Tears. Because when their tears, the Cherokee people, dying as they moved west toward Oklahoma, when their tears came to the ground, it came up as blue corn. That was the blue corn way. Well, in the dream, what is the blue corn way? And the dream explained it very succinctly. Say what is. Say what is. So in a time of lies, one thing we can do is just say what is. This is the truth. So one of my prompts for myself is I wake up in the middle of the night, I have insomnia, and I lie there and just relish getting ready for my day's poem. Just little phrases roll through my mind, words, and they puzzle me. I think, well, what is that, really? So one night, about 2 a.m, I thought of the phrase, this conversation may be recorded for quality assurance. And I had leisure, it was only 2, so I had leisure to, well, what does that mean? Who's checking? Who's listening? How does this work? So this conversation may be recorded for quality assurance. I'm glad somebody cares. When I call customer service to ask about my last billing cycle, and get a woman in India with a lovely accent, her voice freighted by satellite to sort my payment. How can I help? And after we delve into enigma beyond our conversation, somewhere later, far away, someone else prepares to listen for quality assurance. Perhaps it's a mother in North Carolina trying to make ends meet, or an immigrant in Chicago moonlighting to send money home. Think of it. We send our voices to mingle out there beyond the great emptiness, speaking our oldest human contract. Can I help? And then, alert to the timbre of a human voice, someone attends to how certain syllables may assure the quality of our essential bond. So, in the middle of the night, you figure things out. Well, I'm going to flip through some things. Oh, okay, here's a poem from my teacher. Scholastica Murdy. Scully for short. Her friends called her Scully. And she wore these green taffeta dresses, floor length almost, and you could see she was on her tippy toes reading Whitman, Thoreau, Emily Dickinson. She was just in a rapture. And, the spittle would form at the corners of her mouth because she didn't have leisure to swallow. She just was pouring, flaring beautiful words. And so this is for her. Her name was Scholastica, but she went by Scully. In green taffeta, our teacher stood petite on her toes in a trance, eyes blazing, spittle trembling at her lips, reciting Whitman's spells and psalms, Emily's enigmas, hewn meditations of Thoreau, as she gazed long and steady, each of us caught in her searchlight of love. Then she whispered, "Take out your journal and write of fire in your soul that both hurts and feeds you honey." Thus she buried me in rapture, alone with my flames, scribbling fury, my thorns, my wilderness of fear and desire. Now, 50 years beyond her whispered sermons, to my heart, that tattered notebook wears a halo, an aura no one else can see, my secrets scrawled, heaped, spilled forth ragged in code. And in the margin, as a bird might write with a tiny red pen, her words. Some would divide life into youth and adulthood. Do not divide yourself. You will still be who you are 50 years hence. Don't ever let yourself be lost. She's still teaching, see? She still got me in that searchlight of love. Okay, so I want to switch gears and read from this little blue book. I was at a faculty meeting at Lewis and Clark. I wrote a lot of poems during faculty meetings. It should have been called the dean's meeting, because the dean was up there, had the budget on the overhead, and he was justifying. It didn't mention that he'd fired people. Somehow that didn't get on the tally. Anyway, so we were going over the budget, and my colleague Zahir Wahab from Afghanistan stood up, and everybody fell silent, and Zahir said, "The world is on fire. Why are we talking about this?" And there was this beautiful, awkward silence for a while. And so the next morning, I wrote this poem called A Proclamation for Peace. Whereas the world is a house on fire, whereas the nations are filled with shouting, Whereas hope seems small sometimes, a single bird on a wire left by migration behind. Whereas kindness is seldom in the news and peace an abstraction, while war is real. Whereas words are all I have. Whereas my life is short. Whereas I am afraid. Whereas I am free, despite all fire and anger and fear, be it therefore resolved, a song shall be my calling. A song not yet made shall be vocation, and peaceful words the work of my remaining days. So I have a friend who is with the Oregon Society of Translators and Interpreters. They mostly work in court and in hospital. You know, you don't have a language. If you can't communicate, the judge, the doctor can't help you. And so this group, they're a professional group that mostly does this, very life and death translation. Well, my friend Alison DeFries, she said, what if we have this poem go around the world from language to language? And so we had a Zoom, and we had people on at all times of the day and night around the world. And I read the poem, and we talked about it, and these wonderful questions came in, like in Nepal. The Nepalese translator said, I need to know if the speaker is a man or a woman, because the verb forms will be different. The man from South India said, we don't have a word proclamation in Tamil, because proclamation, that's what the British did. When someone came to our village to make an announcement, there was drumming. Could I translate proclamation as drumming? I said, this is a poem about freedom. Be free. So what resulted is this book of 50 translations. And each one, there's a text, there's a little bit about the translator. And then for 43 of them, there's a QR code where you can hear the language. And it's just like a flock of bird songs. This book is like a flock of bird songs. So I'm going to read you the Italian. And you've heard the structure. It's a structure, very structured, whereas. So you can hear the structure in any language. Dichiarazione di pace. Considerato che il mondo è una casa in fiamme. Considerato che le nazioni sono sature di grida. Considerato che la speranza pare poca cosa, a volte un solo uccello su un filo dalla migrazione dimenticato. Considerato che la gentilezza di rado fa notizia e che la pace è un'astrazione, mentre la guerra è reale. Considerato che mie parole sono tutto ciò che ho, considerato che la mia vita è breve, considerato che ho paura, considerato che sono libero, malgrado tutto il fuoco, la rabbia e la paura. Si delibera dunque che un canto sarà la mia missione, un canto non ancora composto, estas vocazione e parole di pace, la opera dei giorni che mi restano. So, then I have one other thing here that to me is just a marvel. So someone took the Japanese translation, put it back into English through Google Translate. So I feel like I'm getting what my poem became in Japanese. This is much better than my poem. To test this with your heart as I read it. So you're just thinking, you have, my co-editor, Allison, says the most severe form of censorship is to be monolingual. You're cut off from a world of story, of perspective, of insight, of forgiveness, understanding. So, this book is trying to talk back to that. So here's an approximation of what happened in the Japanese translation. Peace declaration. Fires are raging. I have to say, it's shorter, therefore it's better. Whereas the world is a house on fire, fine. Fires are raging. The earth is burning. And in the midst of national strife, A fleeting dream is left alone. One bird lost on a power line, longing for the flock in the sky. The news has lost its heart. Peace is a hollow tangle of words. The vortex of war is close at hand. Even in such a body, words reside. I can see how much time I have left. I'm anxious and helpless. I'm about to lose to the flames and anger. I want to try if my words can become a long-awaited poem. I want to make that song, which is yet to come, my divine mission, to speak of the world in a calm and simple way with the ephemeral spirit that remains in me. Yeah, so, you know, when you write a poem, you plant a seed. The reader grows the tree. You know, you're making a draft for the experience that's going to blossom in the reader's mind. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to say what is. Okay, I'll end with a poem I wrote in 2001. I was asked to give a talk for the Portland Business Committee for the Arts. Bless them, patrons of the arts. And then 9/11 happened. And I just thought, I can't. And then I was in Shavasana in my yoga class, and it came to me. And this is the thing about poetry. This poem is probably more pertinent now than it was then. You know, we knew that there was going to be revenge. We knew that terrible things were going to be done in our name. And so this got me thinking about art. You know, when I was Poet Laureate, I'd go around and people would ask me, not in a intrusive way, but just they were curious, what can poetry do? I mean, really, what can poetry do? The world is crazy. What can poetry do? And I didn't have a sufficient answer. So I wrote to my friend Ali Reza Tagdera in Tehran, who's a student of Rumi. He, at his daughter's high school, every morning when the whole class stands up and shouts, "Death to America," his daughter doesn't stand up. Therefore, he can't get a job. Therefore, he stays up all night translating Rumi. He was in a taxi cab in Tehran, and he heard this line on the radio. He thought, that's got to be Rumi, but I don't recognize it. Turned out to be Thoreau. So for 7 years, he translated Walden into Persian. He got help from people all around the world. And he's starving because of us. Anyway, so I wrote to Ali, and I said, Ali, what can poetry do? He said, that's the wrong question. What can violence do, really? What can violence accomplish? Poetry is oxygen. It helps us live. So this is called There Was a Time. There was a time when art was but a decoration, when music in the background was the rule. There were times when culture was a way to sweeten days like fine cuisine. We knew times when poetry murmured in the classroom once the real work had been done. When a book at home was something we might use to put ourselves to sleep. A storm of terror cleared all that again. And now we live by killing far away. Art is not a weapon, but a hand. Is it naive to reach for justice with a poem, a story, or a song? Not so foolish, I say, as to promise lasting safety, prosperity, or any shred of true abundance in a child's long life by striking back. Art must be like breath, catching at the brim of fear to inspire the next epoch of our life together. Can money do that? An army? The greatest power in the world? Be honest. Rivers find each other by seeking the meeting place. Live there. Take up the pen. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Stafford. Wasn't that wonderful? That's terrific. That was terrific. So, okay. So Kim's got a bunch of books back there.
Some of them are free.
Some of them are free. You have to figure out which ones are free and which ones aren't.
Make a mistake.
Bob brought some books back there, Terra Incognita, which are also free. They're the fat ones back there. There's two lists. One is the list for the open mic, and one's the list for the mailing list. So if you want to be on the mailing list, you sign up on that one. And if you want to be on the open mic, you sign up on that one. There's cookies back there. I've been told I'm not supposed to eat all the cookies. So you have to eat the cookies, so I don't have to eat the cookies. So eat the cookies, buy the books, and sign up on the sheets. And we'll come back when things calm down and do the open mic.